It had only been in existence for 6 years. I could see Owen's view. He was saying, look, it's too early. That's what he was saying. It's too early to amalgamate. Give the new party a chance to thrive and grow, right? But you see, the 83 election and the 87 election proved that the people, the voters, didn't like the idea of two parties. We tried to campaign as one, but we remained separate. You know, like I suppose it's going to happen with the two coalition parties at the next general election. They're going to try and pretend that they weren't one, but they were one government. It's going to be very, very difficult. Very, very difficult for Clegg to disown Tory parties, politics, policies, when he's been the Deputy Prime Minister. You know, the British Constitution works on the principle that if you're in the Cabinet, there is Cabinet responsibility. You can't pick and choose. You know, you can argue that I disagreed, and we fought against it. But at the end of the day, you went along with it. And that was it, you see. So in 83, Steele and Owen. No, in 83 it was Roy Jenkins as leader, with us and Steele. Then in 87, they tried the double act. They tried the Owen-Steele thing, behaving as one, and where Spitting Image, if you remember, those who remember as long back as that, had this caricature of David Steele, as a parrot on David Owen's shoulder. Now, I had a lot of regard for David Steele. I liked him very much. And I was always one of the standby speakers in Liberal conferences throughout the 80s. They always wanted me to speak, even though it was before the Liberal Democrats, that they had fringe meetings and things like that. And they always wanted me to speak. Always. And I would, we had a great time there. So the Liberals loved me, because they loved me, number one, because of what I stood for. Federal Britain, which is 50, 100 years of what the Liberals have stood for. So there was that. But also they loved me because I was the only one, probably, who had the real courage to stand up face to face with Owen, which I did many times. He held no fears for me, David. And he knew that. In fact, a couple of times he refused to shake my hand because of the way I was fighting against what he was trying to manoeuvre. And I used to have a call from 2 or 3 of the senior executive members of the Liberals before we joined as one party, back in the 85, 86 period. Look, you better have a word with David Owen about X, Y, Z, because David Steele can't handle it. And they would say, you see, when David Steele sees these are the correct words, when David Steele sees the white of Owen's eye, he crumbles. That's what was said, right, to me. Well, I don't care what colour his eye was. You know what I mean? I agreed with what Steele wanted to do, and if Owen was the blocking point, well, he had to be dealt with. End of story. There was no other way. And the way to deal with it is to tell him, look, there are those of us in the SDP who disagree with you totally. Take you to the conference, and I'll defeat you there. We'll defeat you in a conference vote. Take him to the conference, which he did on 2 or 3 things. And I defeated him every time. Because the membership didn't want what Owen wanted. Right? They were themselves federalists. They wanted a new party, a new type of politics. Whereas Owen was in the old tradition, he was still there, impressive man. Difficult to gainsay that, an impressive bloke. And during many debates in the House of Commons, he was very impressive. And that was very difficult sometimes, because he had his following, strong following of senior people as well. Both in Wales and across the country. He had his following. So, it was a difficult thing, trying to outmaneuver or not belittle, that's not the word. Well, when you defeat somebody, you do somewhat belittle them a little bit. So it's very difficult, you have to be very careful. And sometimes I overstretch the mark, I did sometimes go for the throat a bit too hard on one or two occasions. And when I look back on some of those statements that appeared in the papers or appeared in on news items, there was one that was particularly cringing, even for me today, where I doubted his ability and his pedigree as a foreign secretary and things of that kind, which I shouldn't have done. I shouldn't have done. This is judgment. That was bad judgment on my part to have done that. And in one of the conferences in the middle 80s, The Guardian ran an article. They had a Monday's People column. Monday's People, which was who had impressed or stood out over the weekend. Need not be politics, could be sport, could be the arts, could be international issues, whatever. Well, after one of these famous conferences on decentralisation it was, and federalism that we got through, I was the Monday's People on the following Monday. And the headline was, which party leader, his faculties intact, would take on the boiling cauldron that is Gwynoro Uncut. That was the headline. Which party leader, with his faculties intact, would take on the boiling cauldron that is Gwynoro Uncut. And because it had to be like that. Otherwise he'd win, you see. But then, what's the end result? The end result, as it was in the Labour Party, I made enemies. Didn't you? When you stand up against what the main rulers want to do, it was devolution of the language in Wales, elected council for Wales going back to the 70s, it was all that in Wales, and it was the way of having one party and a federal SDP and all that, which annoyed senior people in the Lib Dems, in the SDP, none of them felt strongly enough about it to stop Owen, you see. But they relied on me, not to win, but they relied on me to be the front runner for others then to join the army and off we'd go. So then, there was now one party.